also, the population, their numbers are, yeah, they're different. Look at the fact that we come out of a story of war, and we start from somewhere. Now, the only wars they had was the other day when there was a bit of chaos because of the political climate. But they've had it smooth, I would say. And as we start, because of the global, the way we are now in a global village, you find, of course, we start playing our part. And I think we've set ourselves to support the Ugandans to be able to contribute and play their part.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let me finish.
Yes, please.
This, again, has to be compared with a highly informal society and part of our people. You find that many of us have remained informal in the way we are doing business and are doing things. And I think every country has a bit of that. But you find our people being largely informal has also made it a little difficult to run at the same, to really see the biggest strides. But I'd like to say, when you look at the National Development Plan and the way we are moving, we are coming closely. We're really hitting some of those milestones, and we are seeing growth. Of course, what the country needs, what government needs to give the citizenry services, again, keeps swelling because there are more demands. There are more demands because of where we are. And so government needs more resources. So you find that while you might find we've really, if you compared what we're collecting, the government keeps coming because of the ever-increasing demands.
Okay, allow me
and
to go to our
yes.
other dear guest here also, Dr. Faith Abiona Mugisha. And as I am to come to you, I remained critically, following the submission of our dear guest. But I just remained, it's my liberty, with some reservations. I received, but with some reservations. And the reservations you may be to put them to rest. One, now we are at 72 trillion of the national debt burden.
Yes.
70. Let's speak at reality. This is the country, our country,
yes.
And where we have done any achievement, we appreciate you. But in this, we are not either bogging it down ourselves, but we want to face the reality. 72 trillion Ugandan shillings, which is in our debt. And we compare to what you collect, especially last year, as you mentioned it was 20 trillion, right?
Right.
20 trillion shillings. And maybe you are projecting to collect 25 trillion. It remains a serious burden, especially to the country, which is not earning much, but yet we are spending much and we are borrowing much. Mm-hmm. There is a mismatch in that. I know you may not be held responsible for that, but we face the reality and maybe propose as a technocrat what would have been done best, especially to see how we can bridge this gap reasonably. Mm. Doctor, it's a pleasure also to have you kindly give us your input into this discussion.
Okay, thank you so much for your submissions this evening. Thank you, moderator, for the opportunity. So for me, in the interest of our dear viewers, for us to be able to be brought up to the speed of partly what we are discussing, we are rethinking how do we best build a resilient economy that is sustainable, and where does a citizen, that is me and you, get to participate. We've been very lucky to hear input from the URA, the authority that is in charge of collections, government collections, which is very important, but as citizenry, when we talk about resilience, exactly what are those key things that we want to refer to? First and foremost, when we talk about resilience, we are talking about the ability of an economy or a household, but in this particular case, I will restrain myself to an economy, to, in the event that there is an economic shock. And I'm so glad the moderator brought it out very well, what these economic shocks are. As I mentioned last week on the program, I mentioned that Uganda is a young economy, less than 100 years, but yet every 10 years, we have a huge shock that is actually hitting the economy. So how able are we that in case of one of those economic shocks, we actually rise up and stay stable? Now, there are always three attributes that we always look at when we talk about building resilient economies. One is that there is being hit by a shock, and when you're hit by this shock, you rise up. Number two is you rise up better. Number three is that you actually cushion yourself against a shock. So now we're thinking that also in line with sustainability, where we are saying that as the current generation, when we are utilizing the resources that we have as an economy, we are mindful of the generations to come. So in that case, if we understand that the shocks that we are currently experiencing as an economy, as a country, what can we do in order to cushion ourselves? And I like that the moderator has also brought out one of the issues, and this is one of the effects that has grown over the years because of the shock. The increasing debt burden is because of our inability to actually sustain these shocks. So when they hit, we think one of the ways to get out of a shock, let's borrow. It hits again next year, let us borrow. It hits again after 2 years, let's borrow. The debt burden keeps on increasing, so meaning that the future generations have no ability to withstand because all the resources will actually be wiped off. So what are we doing as a citizenry? For me, one of the things that I would think that we need to seriously be considering as a country is the effort. There's this one saying of you cannot milk a cow which you're not feeding. So I appreciate that you have all these different ways of milking the cow, but you're not feeding the cow. The cow needs to be fed, and feeding the cow starts with how do we empower the citizens to work? How do we empower them that as they work, they actually make meaningful earning? That as they make meaningful earning, it is something that works stably across the different events of the economy that hit. Now, if that was able to be attained, then in that case, you would be able to, milk as much as you possible, if I can use that analogy of milking. So what do we do in that case? So is it time for us to think about meaningful diversifications? Is it time that as an economy, we start rethinking catch-up strategies? I like your question why you said, why is Kenya doing better than us? Why is Nigeria? You actually brought out Nigeria. I expected you to talk about South Africa. I expected you to talk about Algeria. I expected you to talk about, I want to talk about Botswana because of a few reservations. And so one of the things I can say is that even Egypt is one of the most innovative countries in Africa. They are diversifying terribly. And guess what? Egypt is equally the third biggest population in Africa. So they have their market. One of the things I told you last week at this program was that, you see, one of the influencers of production is that you have labor. We know the factors of production. There are three. We have capital, we have labor, we have entrepreneurship. So unless these are ably mixed well, however much you milk until the others fall out. So to mitigate against that, is it time that the authority, URA, even if you're responsible for actually revenue collection, you think backwards. Because if you're milking a hungry cow, you're not getting out milk. But assuming you had ways and principles of energizing the economy to work. And that's where I'm coming from, and I say this is time for us to rethink diversification. One of the things that I actually appreciate about the president that he always talks about quite often is the issue of population. I've told you Egypt is the third biggest population in Africa. Nigeria is the biggest population in Africa. everything you put out on the market in Nigeria is bought. So because it's bought, if you have as much consumption as possible, that means the services that are produced in the country, the products that are produced in the country are actually absorbed. And why wouldn't you actually be able to harvest as much as possible? So coming back to our role of what can the citizenry do, how do we get ourselves involved? Citizenry, can we find ways of diversifying? How do we diversify? How do we grow innovative systems in the country? Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've been challenging mostly about in my academic papers, in my dissemination strategy, has been the issue of a national innovation system that actually functions. And I like that you talk about the National Development Plan. I mean, this National Development Plan is a localized level of rethinking development at country level. But at African level, which you can call continent, there are also strategies that are in place. So we need to make sure that our National Development Plan fits into the continental plans, call them as the Sustainable Development Goals. Up to the global level, same issue. So if you're able to grow that track, we are saying that in a way you are empowering and building different means and different ways of looking at sustainability, and also looking at getting the citizenry involved. Number two is the issue of digitalization. Now, last week I was lucky to get onto this platform, and I also discussed ably about the role of digitalization. Are our citizenry actually fully onboarded with what the digital world can do for them? One, I know my colleague here will be looking at it from the angle of we are using digital means to collect taxes. But me, I'm looking at it from the other way, using the digital means to grow businesses, widen businesses, build business income. And once you have business income, then you can harvest the business income and build sustainability.
I have a question for you as you continue the discussion. The URA person is here. You know now that you are here, we have the whole authority here. So anything that is paying citizens, I will speak on their behalf. The taxation that is put, that levied rather, on the utilization of internet, and also the presumed double taxation because citizens feel they are over-milked, they are over-taxed, double taxation, and the way how all that is done. Because as we're here, someone to access us on YouTube, you must be having MBs. You must be able to access. And another thing, as I come to you maybe to look at the justification, and himself maybe will give us any kind of why should it remain like this station to operate, much as doing, if I call it a social community service, they tax it heavily. And again, those who are to view, they're also taxed. And even by the time you buy with the television, and also by the time you is having a phone to access, again, you are taxed. Don't you think this is chasing some people out of benefiting from what you could call your authority? You maybe give us one response. 1 minute, I come back to Dr.
Okay, let me say this. The issue of policy is not ours. We can advise and contribute. Please, if we're going to policy, and there's a lot that goes in before something becomes policy. And our leadership is involved. Our elected leadership is involved. Am I clear? Just hold on.
Yes.
Before I go out to collect, I cannot go out on my own mandate. There is a law that I adhere to. I administer the value-added tax.
Just hold on. Just hold on. No, wait. Something I want us
just
to
wait. So what you're talking about is a policy. And my hands, and I want to say this, our overseer, the Minister of Finance, puts in a lot of work. I respect them, and I believe that we need, she's talking about us going deeper in debt. You're talking about this, so where do we get the money from? We have to devise means. We have to look for ways of ensuring that we collect.
So it's a die and do.
I don't know. I want to go back to a lot of work is put in to make something policy. And our honorable members of parliament also put their hand, debates. The public is invited. You are invited, actually. If you did play a part, please, we have starting with September. would start looking at what laws will play in the coming year. Please play your part as a citizen. And we will all be invited.
So we have started from
We will
here.
all be invited to play our part. I want you to take that.
Yes.
And let us bring out meaningful, let me call it debates on whether it should be there or not. But guess what? We are there and people are watching, and people, apart from us here, all of us are online.
Okay, we come back to you, please. Dr. Continue. I felt that interjection, I mean that for him, as you were talking about that, and it was a serious question, but in the first place it was for him technically, but also you, in your view as a citizen, what exactly should be done?
Okay.
But you continue, please. You are still having your 3 minutes before for the break.
Okay, thank you so much. So I was, I don't want us to miss that point because it's very, very paramount. And I like my colleague the way you put it and say, our hands are tied because we have a mandate. The good thing is that now we are giving you this information, isn't it? And you are in a period where you're actually reviewing for next year.
That's
so
right.
would it be nice that this is the time for you to say, you know what? When I went for that debate, there was this citizenry representative who positioned us to this angle. Could it be something that we want to explore? You get it? Because we believe that in dissemination, it is not one strand. We call you for a public debate. If you don't come, then that means you're not interested. No. Maybe I didn't get the information. Maybe I wasn't free. So is there that open space that this dialogue could happen? Because as he said, if you keep eating your mother's food, from your mother's pot, you keep thinking she's the best cook. But I mean, opening ourselves out would actually achieve so much. I mean, yes, I like to analyze issues. I never critique because, as you put it, we have come from very far. We are such a young economy, but we have actually milestones and we are soldiering on. The other issue that I wanted to bring on board was the issue of what we call a circular economy. That in our strive, in order to build a resilient and sustainable economy, how do we build a system? And in this system, we are saying, you look at these global challenges. One of the key global challenges that actually is an influencer of a less resilient economy in Uganda is climate change. You'll be shocked Uganda belongs to the tropics or lies in the tropics, where we actually are supposed to have stable seasons. But because of wrong practices, we have conditioned our environment, conditioned our weather, our climate, our bad agricultural practices to failures, which, I mean, you have no control over. It is us, the citizens, that have to change that. How do we farm? Wrong farming or poor farming practices have actually led to this inflation we are suffering. Is it a form of shock? Yes. Last week I tried to explain a couple of shocks, and I mean, I would go back and say, one of them is the price shocks. Even if you're justifying that there is growth, I think would have grown better if we actually were not experiencing this. So what can we do? Friends out there who are viewers, in this circular economy, we are saying we need to all have it within our mandate or within our interest that the practices that we get ourselves involved in compromise the climatic changes. So what do we do now that this has happened? One, could we think, I mean, through different authorities, this is not for URA specifically, this is for the policymakers out there. Biodiversities are out there. Losses during wastage of products. This is something that we need to rethink. Because you see, one issue, one critical sector failing automatically will sink us deep into a crisis. And this is not something that I would even penalize the government for. This is something for the citizenry. So what are we doing as citizens? This is something we need to rethink even before we choose to point fingers. Lastly, kindly. Lastly is the issue of, lastly is the issue of strengthening partnerships. I mean, I like that URA already and government at large already rethinks that for us to bridge that gap in terms of our budget and what we actually collect, bridging that variancy, they are looking out for strategic partnerships. But now at building resiliencies domestically, what are the strategic partnerships that are in place? Is it time for us to rethink
Okay, thank you. We are going for the commercial break and we'll be coming back. I will be going into a critique in addition to what you have submitted. Much as I do agree and admit the submission on climate change and the call for those partnerships, but we'll be very much keen on the matter of the taxation on our, company taxation, which is a serious challenge, especially for those who are being limited to continue investing in business. Stay tuned to Smart 24 TV. Please don't miss the second round, the third round. It will be so much critical on how best we can bridge this gap, the export trade, the import trade, the taxes on export, the production. All those are issues that we must look at. Thank you.